Greetings, students. I'm Dr. Sadri, your professor for this course, and what we are going to do today is we are going to start with Module 9, Part 1, which focuses on the regional conflicts. The reason we call it 9-1 because Module 9, generally speaking, focuses on the two major regional conflicts in the Middle East. The first one that gets a lot of obvious attention is the Arab-Israeli conflict, and the second one, which we're going to cover in Module 9, Part 2, is going to be the Persian Gulf conflict. So let's start with this topic. As you can see, this topic is perhaps the most challenging and one of the hardest one to deal with, because not only deals with politics and history, but also it deals with a lot of emotional and some religious ideas and a lot of other things. So I'm sure from me, you expect me just to provide a political science one, and that's what I do, all right? This doesn't mean that, however, I ignore the moral issues. I do ignore the ethical issues. That's just not my job, okay? There are other courses here at UCF that they cover that one. So my job as a political scientist, and also as somebody who's independent, I'm neither Democrat or Republican, I'm neither pro this or pro that, I come from a mixed family, as you know. We immigrated, and we have Muslim side, we have Christian side, and then many of my very close relatives, they have married to Jewish families, and so we have them all right? And this issue is not even an easy issue for even my family, that they're all highly educated. Of course, I'm the only political scientist there, and I try to play the role of a a moderate right there between them, and just trying to bring peace and get them to think about that. But some of them, because most of my family members are either doctors or engineers or business people, they have their own views, and I have not given up, but what I try to do is I try to open their mind to the other side, because we see a lot of things, and especially broadcast to us from different sources, and every source, of course, as you know, they have their own biases. Is that right? We have sources that they're conservative, they show one views. We have sources that are liberal, they show other views. That makes it even more challenging. So what I try to do is just to provide an opportunity for everybody to see all the different facts, and then they can make their own decision what they want. And whatever it is, it's, from my perspective, it's fine with me, because we have freedom of expression. Is that right? So that's the most important one. But getting back to the reading material, so as you notice, the main reading, which I borrowed from Professor James Bill, is actually the longest reading we have ever had. It's like about 70 pages, for goodness gracious, and that's the longest reading you've ever had, because all the other readings were much shorter than that, much shorter. Then what I did was, students throughout the years, because I've taught this course so many times, I can actually do it without my PowerPoint, because I know them all. But what the students have told me is, Dr. Sadi, it's really wonderful that you have provided all these facts and details and everything else, but sometimes we lose the big picture. So what I'm going to focus on today is actually that big picture. I want to make sure that everybody has that one in mind, and then we go from there. Okay. Of course, in this picture, I'm going to focus on it from, again, I like to emphasize, political science perspective. So I'm going to talk about factors that we look at from a methodological perspective, from theoretical perspective, from the policy perspective. Is that right? I know to some of you might sound kind of dry, but kind of that's the nature of politics if you think about it. And then you can make a decision on that one. Now, in addition to that reading, as I mentioned, I have provided some supplement, basically the reading summary, which in itself was pretty long. If you notice, it was like 5 pages, single space. That's one. These are all things that I provide. None of those books at that level, because this is an upper division course. It's not like an introduction course to, I don't know, political science or international relation or American government, that they come up with a lot of supplements. In upper courses like that, faculty members like myself, we have to do those things all ourselves. And in addition to that, and as you can see, the PowerPoint, which is the longest one we have had, is that right? 17 slides, okay? You're not going to see any PowerPoint like this long anymore, okay? I also provided a very detailed outline. And this outline, this is not like a typical outline that you guys use for the exams or, for the posting or something. This is really detailed. It goes from first heading to second heading to third heading to fourth heading, and each one again is subdivided some more. This is about 10 pages. Now, I thought this is what I would like you to do. If you read the summaries that I made first, and then you look at the outline second, is that right? Then go and read the chapter, because if you do that one, then you would absorb more of the chapter. And as I mentioned, this chapter is one of the best chapters written about Arab-Israeli conflict. Of course, it's old, and it has it starts from the early period, and it kind of ends by early 2000. But the nice thing about it is, James Bill was not there to provide you with his own views about things. He tries to provide you with what? With facts as they were well documented by everybody, both sides, okay? And then, in addition to that, then he tells you about the political implication of it. I kind of follow his tradition because I almost became one of his, students. He was teaching in Texas, and then he went to William and Mary and everything. But I went to the University of Virginia to work with another professors. But from time to time, I was in touch with him when he was in William and Mary. William and Mary and my University of Virginia, were in next door, basically, cities. One in Williamsburg, one in Charlottesville. So they were not too far away. Anyway, having said that one, in addition to even his perspective, what I did was, among our website new articles and website classical articles, I provided you with two, I wouldn't say new, but these are newer articles that they present different point of view, okay? One by Pude, one by Yuktiman, and then in terms of the classical articles, one by Yasser and Yasser, and then the Schenkner article. These are good, and also the Time for a Binational, State. That's another article that is kind of really good. Again, I chose things that are not too extremist, but they present the perspective, of different sides, you see, on that one. So then that way, when you finish with this course, you say, what, Dr. Stadi at least treated it very equally. Is that right? He provided all the general stuff. But I say these things that don't mean for you to just think the way I think about it. You're more than welcome to be extremist on our side if you want to, okay? But it's not my job to do that, to train you for that. Okay, so having said that one, my family, as I mentioned, they are a mix, We have the Muslim side, we have the Christian side, and many of my close relatives are married to Jewish families. So I see that one event among them. But since I'm the only political scientist, we don't have a historian or anything else. They're all either doctors or nurses or engineers or computer scientists or whatever else. Their knowledge of this area is very little. But some of them, they have a tendency to get really emotional about it, which I try to play the role of a moderator and everything else, and try to make sure that everybody at least opens their mind, because I certainly do not want a divided family. I want people to come together while at the same time they maintain their loyalty to what they have. Okay, having said this one, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the general outline, and then we go to more and more details. But before even I start with that one, I think it's important for you to have an understanding of how complex this issue is. Okay, I chose this map of the area, which it seems like it kind of shrunk. Okay, let me see if I can shrink it back to the size that I had looked at it before. Here we go. You see that, this map? Okay, this map is from, at the source of it is backpackers, Well, backpackers are not social scientists. They just wanted to make sure that people were going to be doing backpacking in the area. They have a general idea like, where is Israel, where is Lebanon, where is Egypt, where is Jordan, where is West Bank, and watch out for any kind of trouble. Is that right? What I like about it is the contrast is quite a bit. Is that right? So it can show you the political map. It shows basically what we call Israel proper. Is that right? It shows West Bank. It shows the Gaza Strip. It shows the, it shows also the Golan Heights. You see the green part? That's the part that Israel has occupied from Syria, and it's a very high. That's what they call it, heights. It's basically like, I mean, when we say height in the Middle East, the mountains are not really that tall, but, it's pretty tall. Well, for us living in Florida, I don't know, even a couple of yards is tall. Is that right? Because we are pretty flat. So yes, in comparison to our experience in Florida, this is pretty tall. So it has a strategic value. And then what separates Israel from Lebanon is basically a river. They call it Litani River. And there's been a lot of issues over there. You see that all the time there's some kind of interaction between, for example, Israelis and the Lebanese. Why? Because now everybody focuses only on the negative thing, and they say, oh, this conflict is not going to finish. Before even I start, let me give you some good news. Is that right? People from 1930s and 40s and 50s and 60s, they started thinking about that. And guess what? They said, oh, Israel is never going to be at peace. Israel has peace treaty with 2 out of the 4 neighboring countries. It has a peace treaty with Egypt. Oh, goodness. Okay, here we go. I touched it, and the map is so sensitive. Is that right? Here we go. Let me see if I can put it back to what it was before. Come on, please cooperate. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the Egypt, is that right? As you can see, it's a pretty good size country. Okay, here we go, here we go, here we go. Okay, so Israel has peace treaty actually with what? With Egypt. Okay, okay. And that's a pretty large border, as you can see right here. Okay, and this goes through the Sinai area and everything. And then it has a peace treaty right here in this side with what? This from this yellow mark all the way to this point right there with Jordan. Then, so these two, actually the largest borders are what? With peace treaty. So, and they're peaceful peaceful areas. Then we have the border with Syria, which is Golan Heights, as I mentioned. And then we have the little border with what? With Lebanon. Those are what? Israel still does not have any kind of peace treaty with, with Syria or Lebanon. Okay? So that's the main thing. And then the other part that I wanted to show you was, see, this is Israel proper right now, and then this is the West Bank, and this is what? Gaza City. Okay, or better to say Gaza and then Gaza City, the capital of it. All right. So we see this, these names and everything all the time in the news and everything. So I thought it would be good for you to know. All right. And I do apologize ahead of time because the lecture today is going to be a little bit more. It's going to be more than 30 minutes. All right. So so this is what is going on now. This is the very, very big picture. However, as political scientists, we need to be what? A little bit more careful about what we are studying. Here we go. This is actually a much better political map. Yes, it's not as clear as this one with such clear, contrast of yellow with blue and red, you see? But you can see a lot more in terms of the cities that are located, the concentration, people, this and that. Notice in the Negev desert area, there are hardly any cities. Why? Because it's desert. All right? And then right there next to, for example, West Bank and everything, you see a lot more what? Cities. The northern part, you see a lot more cities, things like that. This is the richest part of it. So this is the, this little part of it is basically desert-like, and there are still some Bedou Arabs right there. And actually some of the Israeli leaders like Moshe Dayan, who was by profession, he was like an anthropologist or something, or at least he, I do not know if he defined himself as an anthropologist. He had a very major interest in anthropology and everything. He used to go over there all the time and study these, Bedou Arabs. Not for military reason, because he thought that was how the Jewish society basically in the area developed. Is that right? They were also tribal society way before they become city people. All right, so having said that one, now look at, for example, complications right here a little bit. You see the city is so close. You see, you need to think about, this is not very large. This is not like Texas. This is not like Texas that takes 2 days to drive through it. How do I know? My home state is Arizona. I live in Florida. Many times when I had family and we had to move some stuff back and forth, I drove all the way from I-10, from here to there. It takes 2 days to go to Texas. Is that right? This is like, if everything is okay and you don't have to go to a checkpoint, from one side of it to the other side of it, you can take a taxi. If there is peace, just notice the peace and there is no checkpoint. Because checkpoints, you're going to be staying there for hours. Is that right? You would be taking, you can just take the whole thing in about, 1 hour, But of course, there are checkpoints, there are this, there are that, there are traffic over there, so it lives longer. Now, what I really want to show you is this one. This is the reality, okay? So see how complicated that is? If I would put that one right there in front of you, suddenly you would just get, oh my God, I can't do this. So I started from the easier one, we went one step further, and here we go. This is actually the area that there is a lot of issues with it, is that right? And basically West Bank, look, And the sources of the maps are really good, okay? For example, this one is coming from what? BBC. This is from Britannica, okay? So these are very good neutral sources of stuff. So it's not like, oh, somebody favored this group, somebody favored that group. No. You can see, for example, even the area which is supposed to be all Palestinian, is that right? Yes, there are some Palestinian groups, but there are a lot of also what? There are a lot of Jewish settlement. There are also a lot of, posts, control posts, civil control, this control, that control, you see? So don't let this like nice solid thing just to trick you, because the reality is something completely different, okay? Now, why the reality is this way? The reality is this way, as I'm going to talk about, because from Israeli perspective, security is very important. That's one issue. From the perspective of the more militant Israelis, they say, this land all belongs to us. God gave it to us. We are going to take it. So they go and settle over there. Some of the settlements are legal according to rules of Israel. Some of them are illegal even according to rules of Israel. But, international law would say it doesn't matter, legal from your perspective or not. From our perspective, is not acceptable because it's somebody else's land that we divided in 1947-48, okay? So your chapter goes to all that details. I don't want to go to all those details. I just like to take it for granted because there is no way I can cover 70 pages of that one, the other 34 pages, 100 pages in a matter of what? Half an hour, okay? Let's get real. So you need to have some background. So when I go over those highlights, then you can follow me. And I just wanted to show you the complexity of it, okay? So having said that, now let's go back to our PowerPoint. So as you can see, I try to make it as easy as possible for you with only 6 Roman numerals: introduction, irrelevant approaches, historical facts, 3 reasons for Israeli success, Palestinian state building, and last but not least what? The challenges and opportunities. So having said that one, then we can go to what? The significance of it. As I mentioned, it has political significance, security significance. For many people, it has religious significance. It doesn't matter, With religion, we are talking about Judaism, Christianity, Islam. For all 3 of them, it's important. There's just no doubt about that. And then what people, they call actually Arab-Israeli conflict, it's not really a good term because it considers like, oh, wow, there are like almost 22, Arab states. So are they all in conflict with Israel? Not really. Some of them, they have very, very friendly relationship with Israel. Is that right? Some of them are acting actually like a, go-between Israel, and right now, for example, as the conflict is between Israel and Hamas, is that right? They're trying to work out some kind of peace deal. Is that right? But, the 3 levels of conflict that you need to consider is, here we go. Okay, let me see if this one is going to cooperate with us, okay? I mentioned it in a few minutes. I'm going to go a little bit more into details. As I mentioned, the significance of it. Please notice my PowerPoints. This is important because, again, I'm not going to go have time to describe each one of them in what details. There are emotional part, there are jingoistic aspect, there are irrational other notions. Is that right? Then in terms of the context of it, politics versus ethics, which I mentioned, politics is not fair, and this is what I want you to remember. Is that right? Whatever we talk about political doesn't mean necessarily moral or what, or ethical. Then realism versus idealism. What is really possible? What is really going on there? And what do we think that it should be going on there? Idealism. Is that right? And then the whole notion of peace and justice. Some people nowadays, traditionally have been asking for peace, okay? And they say, I want peace, I want peace. Everybody wants peace. Nobody says, oh, I want war. Is that right? But what are the avenues to peace? One of the major avenues to peace nowadays is through justice, okay? So, and that's very important. Why? Because this is not like 2,000 years ago when the Roman Empire was over there, and then as soon as people would say peace, they would say, might it makes right. We are powerful, more powerful than you. We want this land. We are going to control it. You rebel against us. What did they do? What did the Romans do? They crucified people. The symbol that we use to represent the people who are Christian, is that right? Jesus and everything else, the cross was basically the torture device of the Romans. Look at how nasty that was. They wouldn't want to kill somebody quickly and be merciful. Is that right? They would basically hammer them with nails into this, huge cross, and they would put crosses all the way coming to Jerusalem, all the way going from Jerusalem on the main road. There was nothing like nowadays that CNN says, oh, we're going to be showing something and that could be affecting you. It's very hurtful, it's very sad, and sometimes they cover up, they fog out if somebody has died and half of his body is blown up or something, you know what I mean? They cover. No. Roman Empire, might makes right, okay? So that has changed into what brings peace is not might, what brings peace is justice. I want you to understand that as a political scientist and junior political scientist, okay? And then something else you need to accept is this, all right? Very frankly, here we go. There is no innocent side. Of course, if people, they love one side as opposed to the other, they think their own side is the best and the other side is just guilty as hell, okay? But in reality, the facts, as you would read, you would see that no side is innocent. Is that right? Both sides have made mistakes that they shouldn't have. But it is what it is. It's politics. Is that right? Okay. And then again, 3 levels of conflict. We go more into this. What are these 3 levels of conflict? So notice how we are dissecting this notion to try to understand it. One level of conflict is between Israelis and Palestinians. Okay? That is over basically land, claims of each one. Basically, we have, it's like a real estate problem. 2 people, 1 land, 1 location. Is that right? And then in those, summaries and also in the, the extended outline, I actually identified the 5 factors over there. See, those things can be very good question, and some of those are questioned in the question banks that we have for the final exam. There are 5 claims that Israelis have. There are 5 claims that what? Palestinians have. Go and read it. All right? Next. The other level of conflict is between Israel and Arab states. Now, which Arab states are we talking about? The ones which are around it, of course. Is that right? As I mentioned, the good news is that they have what? Peace treaty with Egypt and Jordan, but they don't have a peace treaty with what? Syria or Lebanon. And that's where the problem is, a state-state problem is, okay? Because if you wanted to count it the other way, there would be 21 states. 21 Arab states. Is that right? If all those 21 Arab states, they were completely united against Israel, they wouldn't have been Israel. All right? So Israel is lucky that these people, they have conflict among themselves. Now, the next notion that we need to talk about is other parties involved. There was a period when Israel was established in 1948. We were in the period of what? Cold War. So the part of it got a color of Cold War. Color of, who is pro-Soviet Union? Who's pro-US? Who's pro this? Who's pro that? When the Cold War finished, some people, they thought, the war is going to go away. It didn't go away because it wasn't a Cold War type of, conflict. It was a conflict that had other reasons, other causes, as we say, it had other independent variables, okay? So in that regard, we see great powers involved, we see regional powers involved. In general, we can say it's a very, very complex conflict, okay? So now let's go more. And one of the other things I wanted to introduce to you is all these irrelevant, theories that people have. Like, for example, some people and some of the wonderful people, like President Carter and President, Reagan, very, very smart people, but sometimes they came up with ideas which was not, from a political science perspective, not really accurate. For example, President Carter used to focus on the religious side of it, okay? As this and that, the blood of, Abraham and this and blah, 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 blah. In reality, yes, some of it has that tone, but in reality, it's more of a political situation and security than anything else. Then President Reagan, because he was during the Cold War period, he was thinking about his main adversary, which was Soviet Union. He was thinking about, it's an ideological conflict between these 2 groups of people. Again, both groups of people are actually capitalistic, and, Israelis are democratic, and then some of the other ones are trying to be more democratic. Not really much of a difference, you see. So the reality is the complex policies and political issues in all sides. We can't just blame it on Israel. We can't just blame it on Palestine. We can't just blame it. It's on all sides. Nobody is innocent. Okay? Let's just remember that one. Then, and it's very important also to look at sometimes the images. One of the studies I remember several years ago that I read was focusing on the notion of mirror images. Like, for example, in some Israeli schools, they were showing all these negative images of Arabs, and many of the Arab schools that were showing all negative image of only Israel. You see what I mean? That's not helpful, because what are you doing with the next generation? that's how the conflict continues, you see. So it goes from one generation to another one, not just at school, at home, and this and that, you know. So obviously that's not helpful, okay. And then there is the public diplomacy, conflict part of it, which in that regard we're going to talk about it, that actually Israel has pretty much won the international public diplomacy, despite some of the things that has happened recently, since the October 7 invasion of Israel by Hamas, despite all that thing in general. Right now, some of the scientists claim that issue at the international level is changing. See the pressure coming from the UN and other places, and Israel is feeling it, and that's why they desperately, more than ever before, they need our help as Americans. Okay. Then some of the also most recent scholarly work by Efron, is that right, Koresh, and then Childerson. I put all of these things over there for you. They are in the PowerPoint. Please go and read it. I just organize it here so you don't get lost in the details. You say, oh, okay, that's how I should look at this one. I didn't change the facts. I just organized it for you. Okay. Then let's go to the next one. And then here we go, the historical part. This is the part that sometimes students actually like, because it's history, it's like a story. You can read it, and I'm not going to repeat it. Is that right? It starts all the way from partition to negotiation to who did this, who did that, etc., etc. All right? I leave that one to you. What I wanted to say is we know that in general, Israel has had the upper hand. The question is why Israel has succeeded and had the upper hand. From, again, political science perspective, again, I'm not a professor of ethics. I keep emphasizing that. I'm not a professor of ethics. I'm not a professor of religious studies. From political science perspective, we focus on these three factors. One, this has been, by the way, question. Ideology, organization, and external what? Support. These are the three factors. This has been questioned several times. Said, okay, what three factors have caused the success of Israel? Those would be short and sweet, the answers, okay? Now, of course, there are details about this one. Like, for example, you wanted to talk about ideology. Here we go, He talks about how on the Israeli side, their ideology started developing as when the Romans, they kicked out a lot of the, Jews from the land we call Palestine and Judea and Samaria and everything, and many of them, they end up in Europe or whatever. What has happened, the communities they developed, how they grew, how when they got enlightenment happened and got the education, and they tried to go up in their own land, is all right, because they were born and raised over there. They noticed discrimination, this and that. Eventually, all of that situation ends up in World War II. Well, basically, the Jewish people were considered to become a scapegoat for the Nazis and everything, and they blame everything on them. Is that right? Fascist regimes, they usually have that type of tendency. In fact, it's not just the fascist, the totalitarian regime in general, and even the Marxist one. Is that right? So both extreme, fascists, which are right, and then the socialists, which are the left, or the communists, which are the left. They focus on finding some kind of scapegoat to blame everything on them, so to unite the people behind them, so they can get enough public support. Is that right? So, the Jews, they got the short end of the stick, and what? Millions of them died, of course, in concentration camps and everything. That's just fact. Is that right? I know that some people question that one, but that's fact. All right. So then, here we go, how the ideas develop, and then it shows actually trends in terms of their ideologies. There are subgroups right there. Please go and read it. Then we talked about organization. In terms of organization, they had organization at two levels, at the global level, at the local level, very organized, because many highly educated, organized, they were born and raised in Europe or North America. They were used to societies which are, highly developed and everything. They borrowed those ideas, they implemented for themselves, which is very natural. All right. The details, again, are there. And then external support, that is very important. That's the third factor. External support for Israel has been mostly from US and UK and Western Europe for our practical purposes, and that's very important. Now, when we look at the same factors, for example, for what? For Palestinians, they come out short. Okay, for example, Israel's declared independence in 1948. Is that right? By the time Palestinians they declared theirs, because they were simple people, ruler in villages and this and that. Many of them not highly educated, etc., etc. By the time they got, first of all, their organization together, because first they thought, oh, my Arab brothers are going to come and save me because I'm here and this is my land. Well, they didn't do anything, and they actually complicated the situation, because each one of the Arab states has had its own national interest, So instead of worrying about somebody else, they're worrying about themselves first, That is politics, guys. Okay, I know it's not ethical. I know it's not moral. It's politics, okay? Remember what they say about politics. They say what? They say politics has no father and no mother, okay? So here we go. So by the time Palestinians declared their independence was 1988, 40 years later, okay? And then in terms of ideologies, the Israelis, they had very solid ideologies of, okay, Zionism, basically Jewish nationalism. I know this for some people has a different meaning, but from us, perspective, in political science is what it stands for, okay? Then they were like experimenting with different type of ideologies, from nationalism to socialism to capitalism, and eventually nowadays everybody is wondering, how come political Islam is so popular there? Because all the other ideologies they tried didn't work for them. It became basically, for practical purposes, a failure or bankrupt idea, okay? So then we go further on stuff like that. And in terms of organization, the same way. There's many Palestinians from villages, from this, from that, because right after the war started, a whole lot of Palestinians, they left, okay? And the division from the beginning, I mean, this is what historical fact, okay? This is not something Dr. Sadi made. When in 1947-48, the United Nations decided to divide, okay, they gave 55% of the land to about 600,000, Jews, and then they gave 45% of the land to what? To basically, like about 1.3 million about Palestinians. Okay, when the war started, like almost half of the Palestinians, that they end up in what they call the occupied territory and everything, they left because, some of them were worried about their life, some of them were thinking that this is better for their family, and also there were, rumors, and, some of it is documented, some of it is not, of the massacres here and there. So people, they leave. This time, as you can see, what is happening in Gaza and everywhere, people are not leaving. They are staying over there, because what happened was, when those conflict finished and the people wanted to come back to the occupied territory, Israeli government said, well, no right of return, because you left. On your own, you left. You see? So nowadays, Palestinians, they have learned that no matter how much hassle they have to carry, they have to stay in that area, otherwise they lose their rights, okay, from a legal perspective. So, as you can see, their organization, not very organized. And then the organizations were fighting one another a whole lot. That's another thing. So we don't see the same similarity there. What about, again, I have also organized them based on the dates and everything else. Look, again, you're going to see some stuff you like, you're going to see some stuff you don't like, because I followed the facts. I didn't put any opinions in there, because very frankly, I don't have much of an opinion about that. Anyway, external support, same thing. External support for Palestinians have mostly come from third world developing countries. What do they have? They have a majority in, for example, United Nations General Assembly. They can pass resolution, but they cannot force anybody to do anything, you see? That's one. And then, some European countries, over time, little by little, they started supporting a little bit more of the cause of the Palestinians. And then we see nowadays, especially since October 7 of last year, when Hamas invaded Israel, first there was a lot of, obviously moral support and everything for Israel. Our president went over there and visited, hugged everybody, this and that, etc., etc. But since when the Israelis, they started moving to Gaza, and with the number of people getting killed, especially a lot of kids and children and everything else, seemed like there is a change in the, general public opinion. This is something that I can tell you, as somebody who's been living in this country for more than 45 years, is that right? I've never seen this one before, okay? Because usually it's something different. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just telling you, as a political scientist, I have observed it, okay? So, then this situation continued until what? Some of the most recent development, which is what? which has been the most interesting development has happened, in Oslo. In Oslo, basically they decided, okay, peace for land, and let's make it a two-state what system. Well, very frankly, in theory, things have been great. In practice, things have been horrible. There are lots of talks and very little action. I think that's one of the reasons the Palestinians have been so what? Frustrated, and you can see they do what? They do different things. Of course, nowadays there are also other actors involved. Iran is involved in that whole situation. We can't blame everything on Iran either, but other states, they are focusing on their own interests. The same way that you see that, during the earlier war, King Abdullah of Jordan, not this Abdullah, his grandfather, he was not so pro-Palestinian either. He wanted their territory, just like any other king. What does every king want? What does every government want? Territories of others. Is that right? Okay? But, you see that right now, for example, Jordan finally under the new leadership, and King Hussein came and he made those things, and his son Abdullah has what? King Abdullah has kind of followed his father's tradition, moderation, this and that, and trying to pave a positive role. That was not the case. Not everybody was thinking about that. The same way that not everybody ever thought, oh, would Egypt and Israel would ever have a peace treaty? Here we go. They've had. You see? So let's don't think just about negative side. Yes, I am idealistic. Yes, I am optimistic about things. But I prefer to be optimistic than to be a pessimist. All right? So this is about that one. All right. So since then, as I mentioned, things have been a little bit different. What I wanted to focus on is, again, in terms of the challenges and opportunities, remember the three levels of conflict we talked about. The international dimension of it, the Arab state dimension of it, okay? These are all important, and nicely I divided them from main heading, to second heading, to third heading, to fourth heading for you with a lot of details. So you can't say, Dr. Sadi, I'm lost in details. Here we go. They're all organized. Is that right? And then here we go to the very last slides, if this one cooperates, okay? Okay, what are some of the major issues with all these things we can talk about? One issue is security. The first thing that Israelis would say is, hey, how could I be secure? Is that right? Every state in the world, every group of people have that right to ask that. I want to be secure, okay? At the same time, then the Palestinians say, okay, you will be secure. What about me? I want to be independent, and this used to be my land, and at least I want a part of it. You see what I mean? So these are not very easy things to kind of, relate to one another. Some people, they say, well, this issue can be resolved only by military. Well, look, I'm so sorry to say this, but 2,000 years ago, the Romans, when they were capturing that, they resolved the issue by military. Is that right? Might makes right. Nowadays, in 21st century, this is not really the way it can be resolved. Notice that, by the way, having superior military power does not necessarily always lead to success. We Americans, have the most professional military machine on the planet. What happened to us, in Vietnam? We lost that. Is that right? And for example, the conflict sometimes we have had. Look, Afghanistan, we were there for 20 years. Were we able to change everything completely? No. We returned it to the same group of people we fought with. Is that right? Then what about Iraq? You see? So what I'm trying to tell you is, yes, we are fascinated by the military machine of Israel in comparison to everybody else. But if this issue could have been solved by military, it would have been solved, what? In 1948. And it hasn't. Okay? So what we need to do is, in addition to military people, we need to have fine, smart politicians. Hopefully my future students who are going to be great diplomats, they're going to be much better than our generation, to go over there and find what creative solution to bring peace, so we don't lose all these innocent people on both sides. Okay? So that would be my hope, all right? And hopefully we'll see what happens. Growing Palestinian frustration, which, for some of them is a lack of hope, and that has caused what? Okay, this ideology is not helping me, that ideology is not helping me. The only ideology I have that can help me is my religion. People, they wonder, how come Islam is growing so fast? That's what it is, okay? Because there's nothing else left. All right, so then with this one in mind, the bottom line is going to come up with this solution. And this is what was discussed in Oslo and everywhere else in international. What? You either need to have a two-state solution living next to each other peacefully, hopefully, or you need to have what? One state which is democratic and absorbs everybody else and provides equal rights to everybody. Okay, let's talk about that one state solution. That one state solution theoretically is not to the benefit of the Israelis. Why? Because suddenly in their own country, the only country that are majority, they're going to lose majority. Okay? Because Palestinians are going to be majority over there. So that's not going to happen. Plus, they want to maintain not just majority Jewish, but in a way religious state. What type of state would be? That has to become a secular state to what? To cater to not just Jews and Muslim, and there are a lot of Christian. And guess what? You don't know enough about it. There are also a lot of other religions over there. Okay? There are Zoroastrians over there, a religion that is older than even what? Judaism. There is Baha'ism, and the religion, one of the newest religions right after Islam. And in fact, their prophet, Bob has been what? Has been buried in Haifa and has a very interesting temple and everything else. You see what I mean? So, and then there are other groups like Druze and this and that, and every group of people you can imagine they over there. So it's a very complicated situation. It's not like, here we go, the backpacker, map of the, of Israel and its surrounding area. Look at how nice and clean it looks like. That's not reality, okay? This is the reality. That's the mess, which is all around there, and it's so complex to resolve it. Okay. The other solution is a two-state solution. And for some of the politicians on both sides, that has been kind of challenging. Israelis, that they have an upper hand, this is natural. I don't want you to consider them to be bad or this and that. More powerful side never gives up power, You can maybe give up power after some kind of major compromise, but they're not just going to come over there. You see, I just give you this one. Some people say, well, Israelis, they did that with Gaza, during the Sharon time and everything. Yeah, because they gave that one away to take something else. Nobody just gives something completely away. That's politics, okay? Remember, politics has no father, no mother. So that's what you need to remember about that part. The other thing is that how are you going to be doing it? In reality, in some of the meetings that I was, invited to come up, I tried to change. I said, look, if you focus only on religious side or, for example, moral, ethical side and those things that, just a political side, the issue is not going to be resolved. The way to resolve issues is like the way we resolve a lot of conflicts in our own country. Make a political issue to turn it to become either legal issue or business issue. Is that right? When you convert them to that, which doesn't sound very nice, is that right? Getting a lot of lawyers involved, getting a lot of business people involved, but that would be one way to do it. Hopefully we can stop all these, meaningless, violence between, the two groups and killing of the innocent people, So we can bring what? Some form of, I wouldn't say right away peace, but at least some form of no war, and hopefully some kind of sense of stability. Because if you really think about it, the economy of these two areas, they go together very well. Israelis, they have the technology, they have the capital. Palestinians, they have the labor, cheap labor. Just like we in the US that use a lot of cheap labor from other parts of the world. They come right here because labor-intensive industries need labor. Okay? Like, there is not too many people who are willing to pick up, cotton or like little fruits that they can be bruised, is that right, from a tree, under the sun. Because these things are not done during the night, okay? It's done always during the sun, is that right, daytime, and it's hot, okay? So, people who have capital and technology, they need people who offer their labor because that's all they have. They don't have capital, they don't have what? Much of an education, so that's what they're willing to do. And that would go together. And that was the case for a while with some part of Palestinians, that they would come work in the Israeli farms or kibbutz here and there, or for example in the Israeli factories or something, and at night they would go back home. And now when all these situations happened, Israel started importing, labor from Philippines, from this, from that. Some of the hostages, you notice that they were not Israelis, all right? Origin. They were working in the kibbutz or cities or something because foreign labor was necessary for those what? Very, very cheap. So if we can bring them together, and there is a possibility for good news. Why? Look, Europe. When you think about the European history in the last 100 years or so, basically we can summarize it into wars between some version of Germany and some version of France. You know, either they were a kingdom or they were empire or they were this or that. Is that right? And that eventually led into what? Two world wars that destroyed Europe completely, and then you have to rebuild it. Is that right? Nowadays, what happened was, well, not nowadays, but in 1957, somebody by the name of David Mitrani came up with the idea of peace in parts. Is that right? He said the best way to prevent, war is by getting people to work together. So, three Benelux countries with Germany, France, and Italy, they got together. They established a coalition for what? Focusing on steel and coal. Basically a non-political issue. They started cooperating on that one. Little by little, cooperation expanded more. On other industries, cooperation expanded more, and with more membership and more and more. And nowadays, what do we call it? European Union. I'm not suggesting everybody is happy about European Union, but what? European Union has brought peace to what? To an area which used to be fighting one another all the time. And the two main enemies, is that right, and rivals, the French and the Germans came together, put their currencies together. The essence of euro is, German, Deutschmark added to French franc, okay? And trying to even bring a monetary system, so when you're walking from one country to another one, your pocket doesn't jingle all the time, you see? So we have wonderful experiences that are successful. Let's hope that these guys, they can come together, okay? I know some of the leaders on both sides, for own political purposes, they don't do that, but what is happening is ordinary people, is that right, dying on both sides, and that's just not fair, okay? So let me end it with thinking about the positive side, and if you have any question, and I know that there are probably a lot of questions, after reading the material and everything, feel free to always email me. I will be happy to answer. Bye.